Okay, so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about like Alan's training and how it's gone. I believe you've started with me. You just announced what did you call it on X? The 1 year of harder to kill. Is that what you
Yeah,
call
exactly. Instead of because it was tax day, right? Some people call it tax day, but I call it harder to kill day.
harder to kill day? Well, I'm gonna have to do that too because tax day is always wonderful, right? But I kind of wanted to talk about his training journey because I think it's fairly unique in that when he first started, he was facing a quite a bit of difficulty, like with some knee issues. You had recently like I remember when you first reached out to me, you were like, "Oh, I'm trying to lose X amount of weight, and then I'll start with you." I think that was kind of the conversation. Maybe you reached out to me like 3 or 4 months before we actually got going. And I remember that conversation being like, okay, well, here's just another guy that's kind of like just seeing what I did, and then he's not ever going to actually reach back out. But then you did, right? Which is pretty cool. And I know we started you with kind of it definitely wasn't a starting strength NLP per se when we started you. We had to figure out what you could do and everything. So anyway, what I wanted to just show before I start hounding Alan with questions is just like a squat video, his very first squat session in comparison to your squat session today, just to kind of give like an idea of the progress that you've made over the last year. And really, you didn't actually start barbell squatting until it would have been like June or July of last year, right?
July, because
July.
there's 12 weeks that I couldn't do it because I had the Achilles tendon injury.
Yeah, it was the Achilles tendon injury, right? So then, yeah, exactly. So it's actually like less than a year of squatting and the amount of progress you've made at 60 years old, which is really cool. So just kind of like show you guys, I'm going to share my big screen over to the right here really quick. You can see here's Alan. This must have been sometime in July of last year. And boy, was it ugly, right? Like we're talking, you were even walking the bar out of the rack the wrong way and everything. Some half squats, that depth. And I think this was 95 pounds.
Yeah, no, it started really low.
Really, really, yep. I think maybe that's what we worked up to on day one. And you can see it's like 6 inches high, very, very unsteady, trying to stay upright. I remember we had a lot of talks on like, and then backing the bar back into the rack. I know we had a lot of talks and back and forth on this, right? Versus today, this is 235 or 240.
235.
235 for a set of about four and a half. Boom. Right.
I think the extra depth on these should count for the last one too.
Yeah, we can maybe now you're just trying to compromise. But yeah, you had a little bit of a slight clip there on the rack for whatever reason. But man, like you can just see such a giant difference. And this is like less than a year of squatting. And there's a lot of younger dudes who have been squatting for a year that don't get to a 235 by 5 squat, and you're coming off of, if I'm not mistaken, right, double knee surgeries, the Achilles, you're 60, so it's pretty impressive progress, that's for sure. But as for like, I kind of want to turn it over to you to kind of just discuss like your background and what got you wanting to start barbell training more serious, and then some like the issues you were facing before that.
Sure. I mean, I guess I would say at least for maybe 2 decades, I've tried to at least exercise some, but it was always what I would call maintenance. Sometimes riding the bike and stuff was a bit more than maintenance, but from a weightlifting, I might lie down, do a couple of dumbbells for 45, 50 pounds, do a set. But that was it. It was maintenance, and I hadn't really seriously considered weightlifting. But luckily, X's algorithm decided that I should see your tweets, and I saw what you were discussing, and it just hit me that after all my efforts, because prior to this, the biggest thing that I did was after about a year after I had my knee surgery, I had a hernia surgery too. And then when that wrapped up, so that would have been, I think, 2000, when that wrapped up, and in August of that year, I could actually seriously exercise again. And I went to a circuit training class, and it killed me. But then something snapped in my head where it's like, this was so bad that I have to do something. And I started attending that pretty regularly. I mean, committedly. But they got you with that one is, if you were sick, you shouldn't go. So if you have a cold, you shouldn't go if you might get other people sick, which we'll talk about the difference between that and kind of what's happening with starting strength. So that's a problem, right? And I also found that I would, if I go and my back felt bad, I'd avoid it because of that too. So I was protecting the back. I missed long periods of time because I got these colds, and with me, luckily I don't get them a whole bunch. But when I get a cold, it knocks me out. You know, I'm a wimp, one of those husbands that thinks the world has ended. And so I was missing a lot of time, and I went back to it, and then I was still doing it when I saw your tweets, and I had I went. I'll admit I went on the generic Ozempic. I lost, got down to I think 213 from 253, which was, I mean, it was important to me because part of the problem is my knees, right? My knees have been bad. I've had two knee surgeries, uh, patella tendon on each snapped about 10 years apart. More recent one in 2000 was the left one. And and so I knew I needed to get the weight off, and then I wanted to do the couch to 5K. And so basically, what happened was I finally signed up for him because I got down to the weight. I lost a decent amount of muscle mass. It was pretty clear. Got down to the weight I wanted, and I needed to. I really didn't have an idea of what starting strength would definitely do, but I knew it was something that wasn't in my what I'd done before. It's not like I've never weightlifted before, but I don't know about you all. You go to the gym and you just do various things. There was no true plan to it. You know, you're going to do a bunch of different exercises and feel like you've done something. There was no plan, so I didn't really have an idea what would go. And lo and behold, just before I was to start, I was doing the couch to 5K to start trying to get to that versus your marathon. Um, and I injured the Achilles tendon on my right foot. So I couldn't do any squatting or any deadlifting until 12 weeks after that. So that's why it took so long. But what I should say is that I honestly thought that it's true that the circuit class helped, but I'd honestly thought that I'd reached a point where I was just going on a slow decline until I died. That ultimately I'd never walk normal again. I'll talk a little bit more about that, why I thought that, um, that, you know, I'd have to like stabilize myself. If you're bending over and stuff like that, you have to stabilize yourself, putting your clothes on, stuff like that. And I really just thought I was on decline. And what I discovered pretty quickly with the starting strength program and actually doing what Sam tells me to do versus what I wanted to do, that actually can be reversed. I'm going to decline. I'm 60, right? And 10 years from 60 is, I'm not going to be what I am now, but I've reversed the decline and I've slowed the decline, if that makes sense. Um, and if you want, I can go into kind of, I made a list.
Keep talking, my man. Keep
Things.
talking. I have a list too, so we'll get to where we want to go, but keep going.
So here's my list of things that have changed since I started in April 15, 2024. My back hardly hurts now. It improved drastically soon after I started, but I still had a decent amount of back pain. About 2 months ago, that changed, and I'll get what do you call it? The DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. I'll get that or feel it right after thing. But even if I feel it in the like the squats and stuff, sometimes I really feel it. 15 minutes later, it's gone, and now I have some of that soreness, but that's it. And that in and of itself is enough to do this because I don't think younger people understand what it is um, to always worry about what a movement's going to do to your back, and whether it's bending over to pick something up or even getting out of bed. A lot of times I wake out of bed and it'd be like, okay, how much is this going to hurt? And that has gone away. Not to worry about if I want to go pick something up, not to worry about how I'm going to pick it up. Um, I don't have to this. I should note cautiously that yes, well, I shouldn't do stupid stuff still, but I don't have to worry. I don't have to avoid things to protect my back. If it's a natural thing and I'm not doing something crazy, like I shouldn't go try to deadlift 500 pounds and, in especially bad form, but I don't have to worry about it. Something else I couldn't do is I couldn't stand comfortably for any long period of time. After about half an hour, I would be in horrible pain. Now I can. I'm not saying I find it comfortable. I don't like standing up straight for 2 hours or 3 hours, but I can do that. And as I mentioned, it used to be extremely painful after 30 minutes. It was uncomfortable from get go. Um, my left knee never seemed, which is the more recent uh, surgery, the left knee never seemed to get fully good. There was, it's hard to explain. There was something just above the left knee that never felt right, and I thought it was never going to get good. I talked to the orthopedist and stuff. I just thought it was permanent. Um, Actively participating in the circuit classes didn't fix it. It within, I don't know, almost immediately it was 90% better after I started starting strength. Night and day. Don't get me wrong, I can tell my knees, they're never going to be perfect. But the reality is almost immediately under starting strength, I found that actually no, it could feel better. And the orthopedist and primary care physician, they didn't come up with that and say, you know what, the solution is to actually engage your entire body and start doing some lifting. Um, this one I mentioned before, which I it's still, I could put shorts on and not hold on something. I balance was always a huge issue, and I'm not saying I'm perfect anyway, but the reality is I can actually put my shorts on, and as long as my foot doesn't get caught, I'm not going to fall over. I don't have to hold on anything. And to me, at least, that's amazing. I don't avoid stairs. Now, I'm not an idiot. I don't like going up and down and stuff like that. But the fact is, I don't avoid stairs. I'm not sitting there saying, well, I'd go get it. But oh, it's just so uncomfortable to go up and down stairs. Um, my shirt hugs my chest more than my belly. A nice change. I'm not saying I don't have a belly to still get rid of. I'm probably still fat and pink. But the reality is that's nice. My wife says I've got the triangular shape of a weightlifter now. Um, my confidence is up. Even simple things like gripping things more confidently, right? Sometimes even doing what was like the guy, the giant, the wrestler, they call it something the giant. And you see his huge hands, and what I mean, just kind of that sense that I can pick stuff up.
Is he the
I
one that drank 100 beers? Is that
not, I wouldn't be surprised.
was
He was
that him? You haven't learned that skill, have you? Maybe 100 Diet
Talking about
Cokes.
yeah.
Andre.
What?
Yeah,
Andre the Giant. Yes, exactly.
Andre the Giant. Yeah.
But you see him pick something up, and he'd be just like this because it was so small, right? And it was not long after I started doing it. There's that. I mean, even dumb things like you can't see them now, but when I was in the Navy, I remember one time people needed to take blood, and they're like, "Man, we love your veins; they're big." And that had gone away. Guess what? My veins are big again, right? I mean, the reality is, if you look at my legs or look at my arms, and I've done any kind of exertion, my veins are large. I stand up straighter, I think, than I was. Sadly, my youngest son is still taller than me by like an inch because I shrunk. But as you can see, I went from really just assuming that I was going to slowly decline to now, I can't say I enjoy the weightlifting. It hurts. It's hard. But I see value in it. Which leads to what I'd say starting strength has taught me, consistency. One of the things I like about starting strength is so I'm really good. If I know what I have to do to get a good grade, I do it. And starting strength through Sam, if I don't do a workout, I know it's going to turn red, right? And so that works for me. It may not work for other people, but that works for me. And I have no reds. Now, in fairness, that's because he actually did get rid of one because I got the flu this year, and was it this year, I think, or late last year, and I was deathly ill. That's the only Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Some have had to shift because of travel and stuff. That's the only Monday, Wednesday, Friday that I've missed is the one time when I was really sick. And consistency is, I think, one of the most important things, which I didn't have before. Um,
Yep.
Trust the program. I learned to just trust the program. I learned to listen to my coach, which is basically the same as the previous one, except trust your coach. But now, in fairness, there's a little bit of understanding. I didn't really understand that I shouldn't try to lift more early on than what he gave. And then I remember all caps. do what you do what is prescribed or something like that. Um, and the final thing that I learned early on was protecting my back was actually hurting it. And again, I don't mean that I should do something stupid, but that idea that when I'd hurt my back, say in the circuit class, it hurt afterward, then I would avoid or not do things, I pamper it. That was a mistake because we didn't do this. And then this, since I've been doing this, I've only hurt my back twice. One time I hurt the left side, pulled something on the left side on Friday, and on Monday it didn't matter anymore. It's not that I couldn't feel it, but it didn't matter. The second time was a bit more severe. I don't know what I did, but it probably cost me over 4 months, towards 5 months of slowness on the deadlift and 4 months on the squat. But one of the other notes that I had was about 2 months ago, that no longer became a worry. When I'm lifting, I don't feel the tweaks like I used to. And I think I've finally crossed a point where I'm not saying that there's no way that I can injure myself. And some of it is I may have better form now than I did, but there's something has changed where yes, I'm going to feel it in my back because it's great effort, but I'm not feeling in my back because oh my goodness, I'm about to tweak something. So there you go. I've
Got
gone on for a long time.
No, that's exactly what I was hoping you would do, right? I have a couple different directions I wanted to go with this just based off of what you said there. I think that a big issue, like kind of protecting your back was hurting your back and stuff like that. And a big issue with older lifters like 55 plus, and even really honestly, like nowadays it's more like 40 plus. Everybody thinks that they're aging, they can't do this type of stuff anymore. Most of the time it's because people are fearful of hurting themselves while doing this, So like I'm curious to know, you'd done circuit training, you'd been dealing with a bunch of aches and pains, like what kind of fears did you have when you initially got started thinking like maybe this starting strength thing is what I want to do and maybe I need to reach out to somebody to do it. Like going into it, like what kind of fears did you have, like hurting yourself, stuff like that?
I guess I didn't think about it much initially, but even now, luckily I can have an honest dialogue with him. But even now, remember, was it 2 weeks ago? You said you're acting like somebody who's afraid when you're doing your squats, and I went back and said, yeah, I'm paranoid about the knees, and my left knee has started to hurt a little bit. Not enough to stop a squat, but I am paranoid even still now when I feel pain because if you've had both snap and you realize what that means with surgery and stuff. So I've had to fight that, and that's why I started wearing knee braces maybe a month ago, which is nice. I today I would say I'm still paranoid because of the 4 or 5 months that I felt like I lost because I tweaked the right side. Today, maybe I would have tried that fourth deadlift if I didn't have that in the back of my mind. So I would say that for me, the fear is probably um, anything that I've already experienced, right? Nothing has scared me. I'll admit every time I go into a squat, I have yet to drop a squat, and I'm paranoid about that. I have not used the safety bars for a squat yet. I'm glad they're there. With the deadlift, less so, but I'm paranoid about tweaking my back again. And I have to remind myself what I just told you is about 2 months ago, something changed. I know I don't feel the little extra pulls on either side, that kind of stuff, but probably re-injuring what's already been injured are my major things. I mean, I've got something in the shoulder too when we're doing some of the auxiliary exercises that you have. So re-injuring, I think, is my major concern. Beyond that, it doesn't worry.
Yeah. And like it's obviously there. It's always like, I'm not sure if I'm gonna hurt myself or not. But like your capacity now is completely different from what it was when you started. Like you were getting a sore back and achy stuff from like a light circuit class, and now you're lifting pretty heavy. And most of the time, if something flares up, it's just like a matter of a weekend and some McDonald's and Diet Coke, and you're good to go on Monday. Like so that's all. I think that was kind of the what I was trying to get out of that is like you a lot of lifters come in fairly fearful, especially as they age. But what you notice is kind of what you've noticed, like your capacity goes up, you're getting stronger. And then when stuff does flare up, it never lasts as long once you've gotten stronger.
I'd say the advantage I probably had was I had no preconceptions about possible injury. And that's
Hmm.
why it's probably good that I saw your tweets and not the ones that every once in a while somebody throws your way and other starting strength about nobody over a certain age should be doing a deadlift. It's not worth the danger of the injury. So I didn't have that, but I could see a lot of people my age and younger being totally paranoid because there's people saying, oh, no, you shouldn't do that because there's just too much chance of injury. My take is if you do the right form, there's no chance of injury. If you do the right form, and even if you don't do the right form, the risk of sitting on the couch is much greater than the risk of the injury. I think if they did like statistics of people who decided not to do these exercises because they're too old or they're too decrepit or you know what I mean, and people decided to do it and figure out statistically how they fared, very few people have probably injured themselves who again haven't done something totally stupid.
Yeah. Now, one other thing that I wanted to touch on too, it's where it's kind of backing up to something that you said, like right when you were giving your spiel. But you said you had like I feel like everybody faces this. You said you had like a moment where you're like, I have to get I have to get my shit together and get stronger. I mean, when was that again? I thought maybe at one point in our talks the last year you've discussed this, if there was a specific moment when you knew that you needed to get stronger.
Well, so what happened was there used to be a local circuit class that a couple of young women had twins, and they sent a card for a free session. I figured, what the heck? I'd go to the free session, and I went to the free session. And don't get me wrong, their stuff is relatively hard, but it nearly killed me. Just nearly. So I had thought that I'd been doing at least maintenance stuff, what I mentioned before, and I realized I hadn't been doing maintenance stuff because it just totally killed me, and that's what snapped it. Right, the I'd say the realization that I should consider serious weightlifting because I'd been, I'd done some Planet Fitness and 24 hours, but do that seriously was your tweets that, looking at the stuff there. And it was, I'd say a good progression, especially since when I'd lost the weight, even the twins had said, "Hey, look, you've lost enough, and by the way, you've lost a decent amount of muscle mass." So that switched, my brain to that. Now I need to start doing some more aerobic stuff right now. I'm afraid life has been a wee bit busy, so I told you I'm very good at the stuff that I get graded on. I'm not graded on the aerobic stuff right now, right? So I do need to increase that. Although I should note, by the way, that even though I'm not doing when I climb on my bike, I'll probably do just as well as I did when I was doing that mainly for aerobic stuff. When I've taken it out, I found the strength because what happens now is, oh, I didn't put on this list. I had another list I had. I don't downshift as much, right? I don't need to. So yes, my aerobic capacity might be down a little, but I also don't have to put as much exertion. So the two have probably not canceled each, but offset each other.
Yeah, yeah, the performance of it all has increased without actually doing it, which again, it kind of comes back to that like strength first principle. Get strong
Yeah.
and everything else in life gets that much easier. Um, I think that was actually one of my questions, and you touched on like the red and the green, right? And you have somebody grading you on this. And so I was actually looking at your like compliance thing. I have like 30-day, 60-day, and 90-day compliance percentages that kick up for all of you guys. And yeah, you're like decked out at 100, and you like talk a little bit more about that from like a consistency perspective, because I think that just as a coach, that's the thing that I see people impressive amount of progress is always it always looks like the full green screen, and then the ones that always fall off, there's a bunch of red. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just like talk a little bit more about how you're able to stay so consistent. Like I know, and even touch on this when we first started, if I recall, you didn't have like a whole lot by the way of equipment. And you were like, Sam, what do I need? You had like zero equipment, right? And you were like, Sam, what do I need? And I sent you like a list, and then you got on and ordered it all. And talk about like maybe about how that was helpful from a consistency perspective versus you having to go in like weren't we like looking at places for you to go train in like Denver or something, and that wasn't
Oh
gonna.
yeah, try where would we go, or with
Yeah,
the twins to see if they'd let me use their equipment or whatever, which because since they do a different kind of training would not have been. So I did technically have some Bowflex crap downstairs, but you remember when I was trying to I just sit on the floor because like but either way.
yeah,
So I did have some Bowflex, but it was clear that the rack was needed. And so I'd say, I had been blessed that I had enough money where I could just buy it. I'm not saying none went on a credit card for a bit, but the fact is that I could just buy it. And I like spending money, that is a problem that I have, but I like spending money on stuff. Um, I'd say the advantage from a consistency standpoint is it's not necessarily true. It's very easy to say join 24-hour fitness, pay your 30, $40 a month and not go. But if you spend thousands of dollars on equipment, it's a reminder that you've got this very expensive stuff out there. And the good news is I don't think you have to spend thousands and thousands to get started. But obviously, it's been very helpful when I finally just bit the bullet and bought a full set of the weights from the strength company. I had enough weights, but I didn't have the bumper weights, right? And I bought a full set of bumper weights from the strength company and those type of things. So I think that helped. Some of it is just me that I don't like getting bad grades. And obviously that doesn't mean you don't tell me that I didn't go low enough or whatever, but not showing up for a session is like a zero on a test, right? So mentally, that is me. And other people are, I mean, even in school, you have people that would be happy, say, with a C, right? For me, if I didn't get an A, it bothered me, right? And so I can't blame somebody else who's just you're lucky if you can get them to come to school, right? But what I would suggest is there's just no excuse not to train, I guess. Don't get me wrong. If you really are like the flu just knocked me flat, right? So I told you, look, I can't do this. This is, whatever. So there's a grain of salt, but I would say there is no excuse. If the day's bad, you can shift it to another day. We've done that. When I travel, if there's an exercise, luckily my son-in-law has a set of equipment, and that's usually where I go to see the grandkids. Um, his equipment's not exactly the same. So there's certain things I can't do. For instance, he's got his basement, so I can't do the press standing up because the basement ceiling's too slow. So I do it sitting. And so you can always do something and just there is no excuse. I am going to exercise 3 times a week, no matter what, unless I'm truly deathly, and I mean truly deathly ill. Um, I'm not going to, if I hurt like that time with a left back tweak, I said to you, hey, look, and you said, no, let's just try it, right? Do what you can. And then when I did the right back tweak, yes, you had me back off because it was clearly hanging around, but we didn't stop. I didn't stop deadlifting. I didn't stop squatting. We lowered the weight temporarily and we worked it back up. And you literally had in my plan, do X that you're comfortable with, that you can get to. And sometimes I pushed a little harder than other times and felt it more. So I would just say you can't give yourself an excuse because there'll always be an excuse. We are, I'd say we're less busy than we think we are because a lot of our busyness is stuff we choose to do, like binge watch TV or something like that.
Roll X.
Yeah, exact. Scroll less. I mean, with the amount of flexibility we have in what we can do, but you intersect that with what we've grown used to. We get addicted to different things. So I think everybody just has to say, I can't give an excuse because there always will be an excuse. And I do not. I'll admit, every night before I have an exercise session, I am not looking forward to because it hurts every time. It's a lot. I have not had an exercise session where I'm like, wow, this one is just, there's some I think are easier. The arm ones don't bother me as much, except now that you have me doing the 3x5s and 4x5 presses. But I don't look forward to it, but to me, it's not a choice. I've got to do it because if I give myself an excuse, guess what? Then I'm going to have plenty of excuses. Something else will come up.
Yeah, yeah, which is an awesome mindset to have. And I think like I remember initially with you when I was when we were setting up your plan and stuff, we locked in on like, hey, 3 days a week. I think there's a big mistake and that people think they need to do more to make more progress. It's like we locked in on 3 days a week. And I think you messaged me a little early on into it. And you were like, hey, is there more I can do on off days? Can I go to the circuit class? Can I do this?
Yeah.
Can I do that? And I think we kind of put the kibosh on that. I was like, no, just like stick with the 3 days, get in, get out. So not only is like the mindset thing, like on your end, like I love the whole grade analogy of it. It's like if I don't get my session in, I get an F, you know? But at the same time, like coming up with a reasonable plan that you can recover from, that you can show up for is such a big thing too. Because I think like with you, if like we try to train you hard 5 or 6 days a week, probably wouldn't recover, right? It would maybe go in a bad direction. So like I think you do a really good job of like, hey, 3 days a week, you're in there every single time. I never have to see like I never ever see the missed session by Alan on there, which is great, you know. Um, and I think that goes to show a lot on the progress, even with some of the hiccups and the back tweaks along the way. But like that happens because you're old, and it happens to us young idiots too, right? Um, talk a little bit more. You touched on it in kind of when you started spieling, but like talk a little bit more about like all the things that you have felt have improved. Like, um, didn't you go and do like some biking, hiking with your son and stuff? Is that correct? Like, how has
Oh,
like all the daily activities increased? Just let me know on that.
yeah, you don't so I live out on the high plains and it's kind of boring visually out here. So you don't do a whole bunch of hiking here.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it might have been July. So you figure I was doing the modified stuff because I couldn't do squats and things. But I went and visited for my 60th birthday. I went and visited all my kids and grandkids. And so I was visiting my son in Philadelphia. And you may remember the video where, the steps that Rocky runs up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here I go again. I'm not doing the aerobic stuff, but I ran up the steps. Now, I don't know if my son was being kind and allowing me to stay relatively equal to him or not, but it was not a wimpy thing. And understand, we go from, that's when before you could have me do all the squats, we were doing some other weird stuff like,
And we started you with Bulgarian split squats because
yeah,
we
that
had
was,
the
yeah,
Achilles. Yeah.
got to do whatever we can, right?
Mhm.
And art, were you doing RDLs? I think because they didn't tell me. So that's the other thing is it was
Yeah, the
like
RDLs.
I avoided asking the orthopedist specific questions for fear they tell me to stop. And that's one of the things that I don't want to tell people not to listen to their doctors. But when I hurt my back and I went in, I made it clear to him I didn't want the default. Well, then don't do it, right? Oh, that hurts. Oh, then don't do it. No, I need to keep going. And luckily, I got a PA who understood that. She had done sports medicine and stuff, so they didn't do it. That the lady who checked me in basically told me don't do it, but then she did it. But either way, my point is I went from worrying about going upstairs because I mean I can't say my knees are comfortable. They still hurt quite a bit, right? But I went from that to I'm running up the stairs comfortably and not when I got to the top, I wasn't like totally out of breath or anything like that. So, other things, going for a walk with a dog, it is just less awkward. Before, I still have some mechanical stuff. When you have surgery, you don't get 100% back. Probably get about 95% back in both mechanically. But I'm not wobbling. I'm not feeling like uncomfortable like I did before. I will, when with the aerobic stuff, I'll climb on the bike and not think twice about it, even though I haven't been keeping up the aerobic stuff recently. I guess the big thing I'd say is you don't avoid things anymore. I mean, I don't know, I'm a normal lazy person. I don't want to go up the stairs to go get something that I forgot upstairs. Like, oh crap, right? But I'm no longer, there is no um, factor of it with how much is this is going to be terribly uncomfortable. And that literally was the way I would think before. If I did this or did that, it's going to be very uncomfortable. I don't think about that anymore.
Yeah. So now that you've been training, you've been harder to kill for a year. What do you have any specific goals for the rest of the year? Like what are you trying to accomplish? Is it lift numbers? Is it just continuing the process? Like where are you seeing your training heading?
There's this guy on X who keeps reminding me that I'm below the standards 1.0.
I wonder who that guy is.
He doesn't do it intentionally, I don't think. I think it's not directed at me, but I keep seeing it. So I don't know if I'll hit all of them this year. because if you look at the delta with some of them, but ultimately my goal is to hit that and continue. Um, I can't say that I want to be a record holder because I think that that's a different mindset, but it would be nice, long term to maybe compete and reach a point. The good news is as my age goes up, then it becomes easier to, right? So who knows, maybe in a few years I will actually do something and do something where at least in some area, maybe not the whole state or whatever, where I'll have like the best deadlift or something like that. So it's a nice goal. I was thinking about talking to you again about the fact that I can't do any pull-ups and trying that. So everybody should understand. I went to do that and I was getting some bad, severe pain.
It
I
was
don't know,
rib kind of front, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I definitely want to get it so that I can do some pull-ups. So I would say that that's probably the nearest thing because that doesn't require you know beating everybody in my age bracket. I can,
Yeah.
that's just beating me. Which is, by the way, I should note that I think the other good thing about what I've done is I have realized probably early on that I'm just competing against myself. I don't need to compete against other people. Don't get me wrong. When I see some uh, all guys here, when I see some lady in it, that I didn't mean that. No, but when I see some lady outlifting me, that does
Well,
bother
I'm
me.
under 200 pounds now, so I'm a woman,
I know.
remember?
I saw that today. I saw that on Next. Exactly. Well,
Be careful
testosterone
what you
would be nice.
say.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that when I'm outlifted by somebody, clearly, it's one thing when they're younger. Okay, yes, I'm 60, but when you have somebody who's my age or older, female, and she's outlifting me, I do have a little bit of male ego that has to do there. But other than that, the reality is I am competing and I am going up. I also have to. I got to admit, I have to get past the idea that there's certain things where when you were having me do 1 or 2 reps, clearly I could lift a lot more than when I do 5 reps or multiple sets of 5 reps. And that's taken me a little time to get past too, because like with the bench press, I think it was up to 180 something. And now with the 5 reps, I'm not sure where I am, but it's a lot less than that.
Yeah.
Just competing against myself and understanding that different numbers of reps totally affect where your PR is going to be. So
Yeah. Yeah. And as you kind of advance in your training, I think we always think really hard about like our maxes when it comes to singles and like, the heavy ones. But like I always think like building up that floor. So like even though I know we kind of were cranking your presses up and then we've worked them back a little bit, but we're setting new PRs on like your rep maxes for like
yeah,
3 by 5. They could
yeah,
so I always encourage like to pay attention to that. Even if like your 1 rep maxes aren't going up or even like your tops heavy sets aren't going up, you can always look at your training log and be like, hey, training feels like it sucks, but shit, I've made a bunch of PRs on my 3 by 5s and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think it's really awesome because we've gone from, just barely starting barbell training a year ago all the way to like, let's set some Colorado state records, and do some chin ups and lift more than women, like been a kind of a cool arc to see, So I wanted to leave like a few minutes here at the end for anybody else on the call that has any like questions for Alan. I know Tim, Curtis, who else is on here? Dan, you guys are all just a little bit younger than Alan, and maybe you're facing some of the same things. So if you have any questions for him, to open up the discussion some more, that'd be awesome.
I don't have a question, but I'll I have ran into the same thing. I'm a few years younger than you, um, and yeah, I like to call it your inner bitch tells you you don't have to work out today. Because like on Monday, Sam, if you remember my very last rep of my squat, I thought I had, I went down, and as I was going down, I got like I thought it was a cramp. It actually ended up being a pull in my inner thigh. So I was dreading today trying to do squats. And then today was a light squat day, right? It was like the lightest. Um, and because it was hurting just to with no weight, trying to bend
yeah,
over and stuff. And the first two sets were pretty ugly, um, even with the low weight. But by the time I got to the third one, you know, it it was fine. It did not hurt as much. I don't know if it was just kind of stretching it out more. So, one of the things that I was going to start looking into is on the off days doing more stretches and stuff because as we do get older, um, you do find that as you're getting up off the couch and stuff like that, things are crunching and a little bit more stiff too. So, but yeah, can't listen to the inner bitch.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like man, I'm almost 30 and I can come up with any excuse not to go do training, and you just got to go get it in and go get it and go do it, and I feel like especially that matters even more as you age because the longer you're a bipedal human on Earth, the more stuff starts flaring up to hurt, and the more you just got to push on through. Anybody else have questions,
I'll just
comments?
I just appreciate Alan's transparency. I mean, it's kind of nice. I'm turning 60 in next week, so
Happy
I'm right
birthday.
behind you. Thank you. But so a lot of the stuff that you mentioned, I mean, balance, putting your shorts on, it's just simple stuff like that. It's kind of nice to hear somebody else admit that because I've been struggling with that for years. I've got a whole set of different problems as far as my weight, but similar issues. And I'll just hit on the pain really quick. One thing it sounds like it's the same for you is that I found starting strength on my own about 6 years ago, but I didn't have the benefit of Sam. I didn't know Sam existed yet, so I tried doing it on my own, and I failed massively. I would try to put on too much weight. My form, as Sam can attest, was horrendous. My deadlifts and everything. So what I'd do is I'd get to a point and I'd hurt myself, and then I'd say, screw this. And but what I found out is that being out of shape or not lifting is really painful just in and of itself. And so once you get to a certain age, you're going to deal with pain regardless. And it's kind of nice to be on the other side of it now. Yeah, I'm in pain, but it's muscle soreness usually. I have a little bit of joint pain occasionally, but that's what I call good pain, right?
Yeah,
I'm not hurting my back. I'm not hurting my knees because I can't breathe or I can't bend over and pick something up. So uh, it's the good pain, and that's what I keep choosing.
agreed.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, Alan, do you have any more closing thoughts?
Well, I appreciate everybody showing up, and I appreciate you, Sam, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't still be doing it. I just say hang in there, and I guess, I don't know how consistent anybody else is here. There might be some here who are fighting it. What I've said about other things is it's when you stop caring that matters. So if you're inconsistent now and you need, that's good because you recognize you have an issue and you do it. Don't give up, be consistent, but be glad. It looks like Philip might have something to say too, but be glad that you actually care because there are a lot of people, whether it's weight or exercise or other things in life, they essentially have decided they don't care anymore. They've given up. Don't give up. I'm proof that it took me sadly too long. I wish I'd done this when I was 3 decades, 4 decades younger, but it's working.
Phil, did you have a comment?
I have a question actually for Alan. Alan, if you don't mind, I have a similar story arc as you have. I'm 50, so a little bit younger. I can't do my video right now, unfortunately. But anyway, my question is, I run into a lot of folks that are our age, let's say between 50 to 65. And it's very difficult. You can see every day these folks need to do this, right? And the success, unfortunately, that we've had on either injury avoidance or pain avoidance and things like knees, that sort of thing, or pain repair, it still doesn't seem to convince anyone that that's a needed thing. And what I find too is a lot of the 60, 65-year-old folks are like, hey, you're 50, you're young, you can do this. I'm past that. So my question to you, Alan, and thanks for sharing today, by the way, is have you had conversations with people around your age or perhaps even older, and any success with those conversations, and really just trying to help people get started?
I'll be upfront. No, I don't consider myself antisocial, but a lot of the people I deal with are younger and not having the issues. Um, I would suggest, however, that yeah, so the gotcha you have is, yeah, if you go to somebody who's 10 years older than you and they say, well, you're still a youngin, um, they've decided to they've already decided against it, right? Otherwise, why that excuse? So I would
Yep.
just suggest you can use people like me as examples. There are, Sam, you've got people 10 years older than me, right? Even more.
Even more,
Um, and
25. Wait, you're 60. I got
I'm 60.
27 years older than you.
Yeah, so what I would suggest is maybe we should start kind of, and I don't know if you can do this, Sam, but if things, but we should have kind of different age things and talk about the success. And you can say, hey, look at me. And then when they do their, hey, well, you're your spring chicken, you can say, whoa, 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 wait here. There's this other person that in a year went from doing this to that and had all these issues and stuff like that. So you can use me as an example. In the end, however, there's somebody I truly care about who needs to change that person's health habits. But for that person, something's still not snapping. And they know that they have an issue. I don't know what the solution is with the snapping. I don't know, why a lot of people, if they killed themselves in a circuit class, would have just said, screw this. I'm not doing this again. It hurts too much. It snapped it for me. For other people, it's not going to do it. So I would say have the evidence, but it's like so many other things, whether political, spiritual, otherwise. The reality is that people have to be open to the dialogue. And there's this wall, and what you're trying to do is not block the wall. So you don't go to somebody and say, hey, you look awful. You need to exercise, right? Give them the evidence, and hopefully they'll pick it up. And I hope it won't be the gotcha. Is sometimes the thing that snaps so they know they have to do it is something horrible happens, right? They suddenly are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, or they have a heart attack, or that kind of stuff. Let's hope that's not there, but use other examples. And Sam, that might be something nice to talk about offline, is some age ranges. Here's the 40 range, here's the 50 range, 60, 80 range, and say, here's some examples, no excuses. Here's some examples and all these different things of successes. I just, myself, I'm not antisocial, but I haven't had much case. But I mean, people can see the difference. It doesn't seem as obvious to me, but even with myself, I'll go like this sometimes. I'm like, oh, that's not that small anymore. So there you go.
Yeah. Hey, thanks. That's great. I appreciate.
I would just tag on that and say something like that, addressing different age groups would be helpful, at least to me. I mean, I've got some kids that I have awesome kids. I love them to death, but I did teach them some bad habits coming up. So I'd like to an opportunity to kind of undo some of that stuff. So uh, as a father, sometimes any advice you give your kids is immediately kind of discarded. So, but it would be nice to have some material maybe to provide them, especially the point, Alan, that you made several times about doctors telling you not to do stuff. I run into that all the time, whether it's with myself or my kids, unfortunately. Um, so it would be nice, to set that up to somehow to communicate to them that it's actually better to move and to lift and to get active. Anyway,
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and I know I tell people don't listen to your doctors, but what I suggest is what I did, which is to tell my doctor what I didn't think was good. And now she could have convinced me. She could have said, "Look, your arms are going to fall off if you keep this up." I think the default of, "Oh, that hurts, don't do it." That's what you want to avoid. But I don't want to tell any people not to listen to their doctors. There might be a legitimate reason why a certain person can't do it. So.
Yeah, you got to toe the line with those doctors. It's just kind of two different worlds for sure. But I really like the idea of getting kind of like some group ranges set up, and obviously, I could easily trying to think. I got people in every decade, but 90s. So that could easily be a thing. But something else too, like if you guys are having these conversations, not only me that has these, but man, like the Starting Strength Gym podcast and YouTube videos. They have a ton of videos on the clients in the gyms that are from all sorts of ages, 50s, 60s, 70s. I think they have some videos on people in their 90s as well. So if you are having those conversations with, people that are older than you or whatever, and maybe it is that you care for them, like those are good things to show them. And they're a heck of, they're also professionally produced, which helps. So just keep that in mind there too. But does anybody have any other questions for Alan? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I'm around. Sam knows how to get me, so we're
Yeah.
glad to chat.
All right, guys. Well, Alan, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to chat with everybody. And I'm gonna go ahead and I got this thing recorded and I'm gonna blast it out on YouTube and everything. So hopefully this will reach more people than just this small little group here. So appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks,
All right,
Alan.
you guys, take care.
See you later.
Bye,
Yep.
guys.